Hello folks, Scott here with my 10 cards, 1 kit video featuring the Love From Lizi January 2021 card kit. Lizi is calling this the Fresh Start card kit. Of course, we all need a fresh start in this new year of 2021. As usual, I do take the colored cardstock in our kit and cut them in half to make all of my card bases. Now, I do take the Love From Lizi super smooth, alcohol-friendly white cardstock. I set that aside to use with alcohol markers and cut 2 card bases out of some regular heavyweight, non-alcohol friendly cardstock. Now, my eye was first drawn to our pattern paper, and that one pattern paper that was a cut-apart sheet that had 3 panels on it instead of your normal 4 or 6 or 9. I thought that was very interesting. I cut those into its pieces and came up with our first card, a love card. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. I thought Valentine's was a perfect use of this kit. So this is my first love card featuring that panel from the cut-apart pattern paper. Now, I cut that out. I matted that on a scrap of white cardstock. I was going to glue that down to my bright pink card base, but it felt a little lonely, so I grabbed our little poker stencil in the kit, and I stenciled some polka dots on top of that pink card base using some Hero Arts unicorn white ink. That worked really nice. It added a real nice touch of whimsy to what is ultimately a very formal Valentine card with lots of flowers. After that had dried, I glued my matted panel down to the card front. I added 2 little pieces of ephemera to the sides using some foam tape. And then I reached for this. This is a Lawn Fawn Scripty Love die for my sentiment here. I've had this in my stash for a while. It's still available. I'll have links to all these extra products over on my website at cardcutups.com. I die cut that from 3 pieces of white cardstock and from 1 piece of that light pink polka dot pattern paper, glued those all together, mounted those to the front of the card, added a few of our glitter enamel dots and a couple of pink sequins from our sequin mix. And here we have a great little Valentine card just in time for February 14th. Sending you love. Who doesn't like a little touch of rose on their Valentines? Now, I was playing around with my stamp set and with our pattern paper, and I realized that the white roses that are on this pattern paper in white, very softly in white, were actually the exact same size as our stamp right here. So I thought I could highlight some of the roses on this pattern paper by using our stamp. So our next card on a soft gray cardstock, we've got a happy birthday card with those roses highlighted. I really like that. I took our stamp and I stamped that rose on top of the pattern rose using some Versamark ink, and I embossed that with Love From Lizi silver dollar embossing powder. I stamped the sentiment between those, embossed that with the silver dollar embossing powder as well. I love that. It's very, very shiny, and you don't really have to worry about lining up your stamp perfectly, because then the white outline of the pattern paper can poke through and show that it's there. You still have some hints of that white rose on the sides. I thought that worked really nicely and was a great way to use that stamp with our pattern paper. I cut this panel down to size, I believe this is 2 3/8 inches wide, and then I cut 2 strips of that kind of wallpapery pattern paper and glued those behind it on the 2 sides, glued those all down to our soft gray card base. Then I took the smallest peel-offs from our mink mirror sheet and lined the edges of our pattern papers where they meet with those peel-offs. No further dots or sequins needed on this. I think that embossing powder and those peel-offs add plenty of glitter and shine to this happy birthday card, and I love the fact that that stamp matches the size of our pattern paper. I'm always looking for things like that where I can combine parts of our kits together. So I was eager to start playing with some of those alphabet vellum tiles that we got in our kit, and I thought the best way would probably be to use it as a monogram. So for our third card on the cream card base, we have our good luck card. Good luck Scott, or Sarah, or Sally, or Stephen, or anybody with an S name. So I picked 4 pieces of our ephemera, the curved ephemera pieces, that would go together and make a nice circle large enough to encompass the S on this tile here, and die cut a circle of white cardstock to go behind that. I believe that was a simple 3-inch circle that fit behind there. And then I just glued my vellum tile to the edges of that circle and trimmed away the excess, and that made my little vellum monogram for this card. I took this pattern paper, I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I glued that down to our cream card base and outlined that with our mink mirror peel-offs. I believe these are the widest mink mirror peel-offs, and mitered the corners for a nice little shiny frame around that panel. Then I glued my S that's on top of the white to the center of the card, added my ephemera pieces using foam tape around that. I stamped the good luck on a scrap of white cardstock. I have lots of white cardstock strips laying around just waiting for sentiments to be stamped on them. I stamped this using frayed burlap distress oxide ink, and I embossed that with some clear embossing powder, so that's nice and shiny too. I trimmed that down to a little banner, glued that to the front of our card with more foam tape, and added a few sequins here and there for a little more pop and shine on this good luck card. If nothing else, those alphabet tiles are perfect for monogram cards, for personalizing a card with someone's initial. Really pretty, very nice. I love that pattern paper with the cream card base behind it. So, you know, I like coloring. I was eager to color the stamps in this stamp set. Fortunately, we got stamps that we could color. So for my 4th card on the mint card base, we have a miss you card. I really like this one. Heaven knows I miss a lot of people these days. So I took our sheet of printed vellum, that 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of printed vellum, and I cut it into 4 pieces. 4 pieces of 4.25 by 5.5 inch. Now, 2 of those vellum pieces had the pattern perfectly centered in the 4.25 inch by 5.5 inch panel. So I die cut the center of that panel using a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and then I ran that through my Xyron sticker maker machine and glued that to a scrap of white cardstock, and then I die cut the white cardstock again using the same die, matching it up to the vellum piece, and die cut that down. I went ahead and die cut 2 more layers of white cardstock and glued those all together, so our center panel is a nice chunky panel there, 3 layers thick plus a layer of vellum on top. Then I took the little frame that was left over when I die cut the center of that vellum. I ran that through my Xyron sticker maker and carefully laid that down onto my mint card base. Then that panel fit right in the opening, glued that right down. We've got a continuous pattern. All 5 of these stripes continue through that center panel and down. I really like that. I thought that was very unique and a great way to use that printed vellum pattern paper. I stamped this bouquet stamp on a sheet of Bristol smooth cardstock and colored that with my Zig Clean Color Real brush markers. I literally only used the crimson red and the olive green markers to color this, and then I die cut that with a matching die from our kit. I stamped the sentiment on another scrap of white cardstock. It's a little bit wider than what our banner die in our kit will cut, but it fits perfectly. I trimmed that down. I stamped that with onyx black ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. You can see that shine there. I mounted the flowers and the sentiment to our card front using foam tape. And then I tied a little bow for the top here using one of the ribbons in our kit and added 3 of our glitter enamel dots behind that. Miss You, really nice. I really like this bouquet. It's quite pretty and perfectly sized to use on a card front. Miss you. I miss so many people these days. But hopefully we'll be all together soon. Miss you. You've been following me, you know me, I like my bright colors. Lizzie often throws me some curves with her soft color palettes and lots of pinks and grays and dark greens. I thought I would see if I could use this kit to come up with something a little bit more colorful, a little bit more bright with pops of color for our 5th card here. Again, on the mint card base, we've got a thank you card, a purple thank you card. Damn the pink. I took our poker stencil and a scrap of white cardstock and I ink blended the poker stencil onto that white cardstock using Seedless Preserves Distress ink. I inked that a little heavier around the edges and a little lighter towards the center, just for a little variation there. And then I die cut that piece with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, of course, and then ink blended the edges a little bit more with some of that same ink. I matted that to a thin mat of purple glitter cardstock. This is an old pack of glitter silk cardstock that I had in my stash. I thought it went very well with that Seedless Preserves ink. I matted that on the glitter paper, glued that down to our mint card base. Again, I stamped our flower image here with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, colored that with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. This is just using the violet marker, and this is the green and the dark green markers. I die cut that out with the matching die, mounted that to our card front with some foam tape, and then I added our thank you sentiment. This thank you die is actually from the Love From Lizi December of 2018 card kit in my stash. I really like this thank you die. It comes in very handy. I die cut that 3 times from white cardstock and once from that same purple glitter cardstock. Glued those all together for a nice chunky sentiment there. Glued that down to my card front. Added 3 of those pink sequins from our sequin mix. I think they look pretty purple on this purple card. A nice thank you card. Purple and green always works well together. Thank you. And now I have one more flower stamp in our stamp set left to color. So for my next card here, again on that bright pink card base, we've got a happy anniversary card. I really like this one too. I'm not quite sure why. It is incredibly pink. But for Christmas this year, I got a set of these scallop square layering basic dies. These are scallops. Now, I don't have any big scallop layering dies in my set. I'm not a huge fan of scallops, but these are really itty bitty, tiny, tiny scallops, and I really like those. I think it's the big, bulky scallops that don't do a lot for me, but these little mini scallops I thought were really, really useful. Thank you for this nice Christmas present. So I took the other panel of the vellum printed sheet that had the pattern nicely centered. I ran that through my Xyron sticker maker and glued that down to a piece of white cardstock, and then I cut them both together using my scalloped dies. It's easy to get a rectangle out of a square die if you just do partial die cutting. Then I noticed that this pattern paper actually has the same pattern as what is on our vellum sheet without the green garland running in between. So it's got this same floral garland at every stripe along the paper. I thought that was really interesting and would match nicely. I die cut this piece at a diagonal from that pattern paper, mounted that to a thin white mat behind that, glued those down to my card front with some foam tape. I again stamped our stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, colored that with my Zig Clean Color markers. Now I did use the pink, light pink, and pale pink markers. colors for this flower, and then a couple of the greens for the leaves. I die cut that out with our matching die from the set. And as I was putting this together, I kept thinking, this feels like an anniversary card. I'm not sure. So I dug through my stash and I found this happy anniversary sentiment in this. This is the Hero Arts Mini Everyday Messages stamp set. I use this a lot. Happy anniversary went along perfectly and actually matched very nicely with the sentiments in our kit. I stamped that on another scrap of white cardstock. I did cut this out with the banner die in our card kit, which was a little short, so again, with partial die cutting, I managed to make that rectangle a little bit longer to hold my whole sentiment here. That's stamped with VersaFine Onyx Black ink and of course embossed with some clear embossing powder. I mounted that to the card front with more foam tape, added a couple of glitter enamel dots to the side of that. A really nice, very pretty happy anniversary card. I believe food and flowers are proper gifts for a 4th anniversary. So that would work. I really like that poker stencil this month and wanted to see if I could use that poker stencil on one of the plainer pattern papers in our kit and zhuzh it up a notch, see if that was useful. On the soft gray card base, we've got Forever in Our Hearts in Loving Memory, a really nice sympathy card. I took that pattern paper, that pale green pattern paper with the sketchy flowers and the white dots, and I stenciled our poker stencil on top of that using Iced Spruce Distress Oxide ink. I just went ahead and did the entire panel. It's a 6x6 stencil, so it virtually covered the entire 6x6 inch pattern paper sheet. Then I took our 2 little itty bitty mini flower stamps from our stamp set and stamped those inside all of the little circles on our card here. I thought that looked really nice. Really gave that pattern paper almost another purpose. Once that was all ink blended and stamped, I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added a thin mat of pink. This is a Peony Hero Hues cardstock from Hero Arts. I cut a mat for that and then stamped the sentiment in the center and fussy cut that out. This stamp is actually from the Heaven Held add-on stamp set from June of last year, Forever in Our Hearts. I really like this stamp set. It's really useful for sympathy cards. Heaven knows we've been using too many sympathy cards this last year, but I really like that sentiment. I fussy cut that out of the center of our mat. Then I glued those 2 pieces together, glued them down to our card base. I stamped the bouquet stamp on that pale pink with gray polka dot pattern paper, embossed that with some clear embossing powder, and then I took my colored pencils to that and added just some light touches of color to the flowers and to the leaves. I didn't try to color them in completely. I wanted to preserve some of that pattern paper in the background. I die cut that again with our matching die from our kit and mounted that to our card front with some foam tape. The sentiment is embossed in clear embossing powder as well and mounted with some foam tape. It's kind of a racket of polka dots on this card between the stencil and the pattern paper and the pattern paper here. I loved stamping the stamp on the pattern paper and giving it just a little bit of color. I think this is a really nice, certainly would be well received, a sympathy card. Now, I was determined to use those vellum alphabet tiles again. I wanted to see if I could spell a word with it. Of course, it would be a very short word to go onto an A2 card, but on another white card base, we've got a joy card with Merry Christmas right there, a very formal Christmas card. I took the J, O, and Y tiles, ran them through my Xyron sticker maker, glued those down to scraps of white cardstock, and then fussy cut them all out. It was a little tedious, but it really wasn't that hard to cut those pieces out. I glued them together where I thought they made a semblance of a real word and set them aside. I cut this piece of pattern paper to 4 inches by 5¼ glued that down to my white card base, no mat on that. I then took our Merry Christmas stamp. This is actually from the Love From Lizi November 17 card kit. There's that little itty bitty tiny Merry Christmas. It fit perfectly inside the O there. Merry Christmas. I stamped that using some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. The joy is then mounted with lots of little bitty foam squares behind it, and then I added a lot of sequins to this to give it a nice pop of sparkle and shine. Merry Christmas, joy. A really nice, rather formal Christmas card. I was trying to figure out a way to use our little circle dies that came in our die set this month, and I finally came up with this idea. This is on our last cream card base, and we've got a 2021 Fresh Start New Year's card. I went ahead and grabbed that same batch of glitter silk cardstock. It has all the colors of the rainbow in that, and I die cut the 3 circle dies from our kit out of 6 of those colors, arranged them on my card front, and glued them all down. I really like the sparkle there. I thought this was a perfect use for that fresh start sentiment in our kit. Now, I did turn to my silhouette portrait to do the 2021. I cut that out of some auburn pearl cardstock from my stash. This is old. I love it though. I tell you, a lot of my stash is filled with items that if I'm buying something, especially from someone's online site, I'll always go to the sales section and see what's on sale. And if there's some great bargains, I'll throw those into my shopping cart as well. This was one of those buys. I have at least one more whole pack, if not more, of this stuff. It's come in very handy over the years. This is a Coordinations Auburn Pearl pearlized cardstock. I cut those out with my Silhouette software. This is using the Silhouette Stars and Stripe font. I'll have a link to all of these fonts on my website at cardcutups.com. I cut that 3 times out of some ivory cardstock. This is my plain old Staples ivory cardstock. Cut that 3 times and then once out of that auburn pearl. Glued those all together, so we've got a nice chunky 2021 there. Mounted those to my card base, glued them right down. I stamped the Fresh Start on another scrap of that ivory cardstock, which is actually quite a close match to that cream cardstock. I stamped that with Versamark ink and then embossed that with some Copper Rose, Love From Lizi Copper Rose embossing powder. That actually goes quite well with that auburn pearl cardstock. Really sparkly, really shiny. Looks like a party to me. Happy New Year. 2021 is definitely a fresh start for us all. There's some color for you. So almost every month we get some alcohol-friendly white cardstock from Lizi. So I thought I would tackle that bouquet stamp and color it with my alcohol markers. And so for our last card on a white card base, we've got So Grateful for You, featuring that lovely bouquet stamp. I stamped it once on the top, once on the bottom, just a piece of 4¼ by 5½ inch alcohol-friendly cardstock, Lizi's super smooth white cardstock, and colored those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Here's a quick shot of all of the markers I used on this card. I tried to keep this fairly simple, but at the same time, I wanted to give it as much brightness and color as possible. Now, after I colored up the 2 bouquets, I was going to leave the background white, but then I thought, oh, let's try and color up the background. So I reached for this is actually, though it looks brown, it's actually the dusty purple markers from Spectrum Noir. I fiddled and played around with that. It took me a little bit of time and probably a lot of ink, but I got a really nice background going on that. And I've got nice pops of color with my bouquets without having to die cut them. This is basically a one-layer card, although there is a mat here. After I had colored my entire background, I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I matted that to a piece of my Auburn Pearl cardstock and glued that down to a top folding white card base. And then I stamped the sentiment using Versamark ink, embossed that in white. That sentiment is actually from the Love From Lizi September of 2019 mini thanks stamp set right there. So grateful for you. This stamp set is actually been released again this month, so if you missed this kit and like these stamps, it is available with this card kit over at Love From Lizi. I embossed that with white, added 3 white little sequins on the side there for a little bit of bling. So grateful for you. I really like that card. I'm always trying to push my comfort zone with my alcohol markers, and I rarely color in a background like this, but I think it came out really nice. And I'm pleased that I grabbed the pen by the horns and went for a colored background on this. So that's my 10 cards using the Love From Lizi January 2021 Fresh Start card kit. I'm really pleased with this selection of cards. I was a little taken aback when I first got this kit going, oh no, it's all flowers, it's all pink, it's all flowers, it's all pink. But I discovered as I worked on this that this is actually a great kit for creating a huge variety of cards. Here we have a Valentine, a birthday card, a good luck card, a miss you card, a couple of thank you cards, an anniversary card, a sympathy card, a Christmas card, a New Year's card. One of the nice things about Lizi's card kits is that they so often lend themselves to a wide variety of uses, and I was really kind of surprised that I got so many different looks and so many different styles and different sentiments of cards using this kit. Now, I did use a little bit of everything in this card kit this month. I almost used all of the stamps. I think the only stamps I didn't use were the 3 little bitty leaf stamps, but I used all of the other stamps, all of the sentiments. I used 8 of the 16 pattern papers, so I have 8 full sheets left, but I used 8 of them, so that's half of our pattern papers. I seem to always hit that halfway mark with my pattern papers. I used some of the enamel dots. I used 4 of the vellum alphabet tiles. I used half of our printed vellum sheet. I did use every single die in our die set. I used a little bit of the ribbon. I used a decent amount of our ephemera pieces, some of the peel-offs, and of course I used that great poker stencil 3 times on these cards. And of course I did use a number of sequins in these cards. All of my extras will find loving homes in my stash. As you can tell, I do dig through old Love From Lizi kits for other sentiments to use with my cards. Thank you so much for joining me, folks. I hope you like these cards. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. I really love having stamps that I can color, and these flower stamps lent themselves quite nicely to a wide variety of cards. As a posting, this kit is still available at Love From Lizi, along with the January release. If you haven't gotten one yet, I'd run over there as soon as possible and grab one for yourself. If you do go shopping from Lizi, please use my links in the description down below. You have no idea how much that helps these days. I wish you all the greatest, happiest, and healthiest New Year's ever. I am so looking forward to a great deal of difference in this coming year, and I want to get back to work, please. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. Thank you for your continued support and encouragement. It means the world to me. It is truly the only thing that has gotten me through these past 9 months of our pandemic and what could very possibly be the next 6 months of our inoculations. I send you and yours all my blessings for a happy and healthy new year. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, I wish you happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.